Today on Doomed, it was the last debate between the Democratic candidates for president before the Iowa caucuses. And CNN, who was hosting the debate, really wanted there to be some drama. Was there? Was there not? Who's looking good going into Iowa caucuses? Who's not? All that and much, much more, plus a lot of media criticism on the debate host tonight, for sure. Let's get right to it. It's late. The Dem debate's just finished. It's almost midnight. Let me pull my guest up right now onto the screen so you could all see us. Ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Uhl, a progressive activist who you all know if you're on Twitter because he's everywhere. He's getting retweeted a million times. He's got, how many followers do you got, buddy? You got 200-something thousand, right?
Too many.
Right. You should be proud of it. Don't play it down.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
If I had as many followers as you, let me tell you, this show would be, the name of the show would change to the exact follower account I have. That would be, it would just constantly changing, right?
Nice.
So, Jordan, this was quite the debate tonight. And I've done these post-debate shows for every debate of 2019. And this is the first of 2020, although it's the last before the Iowa caucuses. And every time I've had a guest on, we discussed the debate. And we've always talked about how it's frustrating how the candidates don't go at each other. I know everyone wants to preach unity, but we're at the point now where people need to just, you don't have to attack. You don't have to do, negative attacks on someone's character. Just go hard on someone's voting record. Go hard on the policy proposals someone supports. And I would say it was more so, we saw more so of that tonight than ever before. But altogether, I still think they're oddly, this was the last one before the caucuses, they were still just not, they were just pulling punches.
Yeah, CNN very clearly wanted theatrics tonight. I mean, the nature of cable TV and corporate TV debates is they want optics, they want fireworks, and they want the barbs, the sparks, all that kind of shit. This was very clear what they wanted. The questions were set up to create those moments. They weren't, as you say, created or devised where people could get into deep dives about their policy differences and things like that. We saw questions with Sanders. It was on trade. It was hey, why won't you make a compromise on this policy? Doesn't that hurt farmers? And then the questions to other candidates was, hey, isn't this a bad idea that Sanders isn't compromising? How is that? Why not talk about what could be done? Why not talk about alternate scenarios? Why just are we accepting Trump's trade deal plan as the default, and then everyone else has to kind of weigh in on why Sanders' position on that is right or wrong?
Right.
So it's not a meaningful substantive debate by any measure.
Right. It's the parts of tonight's debate where they actually went at each other was just like you said. It was just meaningless sort of dramatization by CNN. There was a number of frustrating moments where, for example, let's get right to it. It's on everyone's mind. It was the talk of the past 48 hours. This new battle between Warren and Sanders, the two have not gone at each other at all. This whole primary, whenever any sort of moderator tried at previous debates, they brought up how they were friends and they just had some, differences, but for the most part actually lined up on policy. They would point out what those differences were and why one person would probably be more likely to support the other person, but there was no going at each other. This was different this time, and that's because of a story that broke on from CNN, interestingly enough, a couple of days ago, where 4 sources told CNN that Warren and Sanders had a meeting in 2018 before either of them ran for president to discuss their presidential hopes. And this was previously reported, but no one knew what it was about because it was a private conversation. And then all of a sudden, CNN has these 4 sources telling them that this private conversation, what went down actually is that Sanders apparently said to Warren that a woman can't become president. What would you like to say about that, Jordan?
Man, I mean, I have been pretty open over the past day or two about the whole story, because I think it was, so the story itself I think was rushed, and I think it was hastily prepared and clearly to create drama and theatrics for tonight. And then we saw CNN reporters shortly before the debate talking about, oh, things to look out for. Will Warren and Sanders fight? The New Yorker did a piece last night in response to that article about, hey, this is the long-awaited fight between Warren and Sanders is finally here. Nobody really on the progressive side wants them to fight, because you could kind of fracture the progressive wing. I think most people would agree that if they're generally agreeable and unified to some extent, it's better in the long run for everybody in the progressive left. But CNN doesn't have a vested stake in that. They don't give a shit. They want optics.
Right.
So they pushed this story, relied on secondhand, anonymous sources, which, I mean, if you know someone who does investigative work, that's just like, that's not actual confirmation, because it's very easy for, say, if I'm in Warren's camp and I give you the CNN reporter this story, and then to confirm that I give you my associate or my friend, that's not actually confirmation, because it's very clear that, like, we could just have the same story because we're on the same side. You want a separate independent source, and it's not very clear whether CNN did that. And as more details emerged, it looked like it was a conversation about the effects and role of sexism in the 2020 election based on what Bernie saw in 2016. And he was a little bit more skeptical of someone's staying power because of that. And that was then conflated. It was stripped of all context and then conflated with Bernie doesn't think a woman can win, which is just a huge jump, especially based on everything he's been on the record as saying since the 80s. So like you said tonight, they brought it up, and it was like presented again, to go back to the insane rat fuck line of questioning. Are we allowed to swear on it?
Absolutely. Fuck.
Okay.
Shit. Say whatever you'd like.
But it was this insane line of questioning where it's just like, Senator Sanders, did you say that? And he said no. And they turned to Warren, and it's like, Warren, what was it like when he definitely said this? It was just like, why even bother asking if you don't care?
Right. I mean,
it's insane.
It's literally like malpractice. Like, you can't do that. You're like, as a moderator, you can't literally, like, that's injecting your opinion right there. There's no way around it. I don't know how else you interpret that. It was just ridiculous. And, the idea, I thought it was interesting that they went to Bernie first, actually, because if they really wanted to really fuck him over, the easiest thing would have been to let Warren start that conversation so she could set the stage. I think by letting Bernie talk first, he was able to pretty much let the conversation go in the direction he wanted to, and then she had to answer that instead of her teeing it up for him. But I don't think they did that on purpose. I think it was just not an oversight or whatever. It's really troublesome that what happened on the stage there actually happened at all, because I really thought that they would ask the question, and Warren would want to not talk about it. She would want to move on from it, and Bernie, being that he's the one who had the word said about him, that he said this, he would simply deny and move on. But Warren doubled down on it again, in terms of just like, easiest thing in the world is literally just to say, listen, it was a private conversation. It shouldn't have gone out. We were discussing strategy, or, whatever was said was said. I don't want to talk about it. But that's not what happened. I mean, how do you, and listen, if for any Warren supporters listening right now, if Warren wants to go this route, by all means, she should. If this is how she thinks she's going to win, then go for it. But don't pull this shit where you're going to do this sort of attack and then pull, oh, everyone be nice and unify, unity. Just be that person. Just do it. In fact, in my opinion, all these candidates have been wasting their time with being nice in this era of let's pick a damn candidate. So, like, that should be the thing. Like, they should just be going at it. Like, how many people are on the stage tonight? 6?
6.
How long did it take us to get to 6 candidates? We've been doing this for over a year now. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And it's just, it's funny that the whole unity candidate thing was launched just as this all happened from the Warren campaign. I mean,
Yeah.
what's like, come on, man. Like, just listen, if you want to do this, just do it. Be upfront about it. Say, Bernie Sanders said this to me. I don't know how you say you're good friends with him after and you're going to be buddy-buddy after. I mean, one of the things that just isn't talked about at all is the fact that you have a private conversation with someone you consider your friend. I mean, unless what they said something that you think must be heard because it's a life and death scenario, I mean, you're snitching on your buddy. Like, to like, it's like you wouldn't, as a reporter, you wouldn't do this to someone telling you something in a private conversation that was discussed to be off the record. And she's on the record saying at South by Southwest last year, she was asked about the conversation and she straight up said a private conversation should remain private. I mean, that's the issue no one's talking about. Someone, like, again, if she wants to do this, just fucking do it. Like, if some Republican told me something and said, oh, but I want this to stay private, I don't give a fuck. If it's going to hurt you, I'm going to go out and say it, but I'm not going to pretend you're my best buddy afterwards. You said something ridiculous and it should be called out on. This, you can't have your cake and eat it too. That's what I'm trying to say, and that's what she's trying to do.
Yeah, there was also an article from December 2018 in the New York Times about this meeting. And in it, it says sources familiar with the meeting said that neither candidate tried to dissuade the other from running. And it's like, if this happened, when they say it happened, that immediately after she said this went on, why wouldn't they divulge it then? Because if it's such a grave thing that must be brought to light, why sit on that for a year plus, and then drop it the day before a debate, the last one before Iowa, in a state where you stand to gain the most votes from him? I mean, it just seems like a calculated move.
Listen, even
go ahead.
Even if you're someone who doesn't believe Liz Warren would do that, and I can understand. I don't think she's like people hear me criticize Elizabeth Warren, who I've consistently said is a progressive. I'm not one of those weirdos who's saying that she's a Hillary 2.0. Like, no, I don't even believe. That's not even what I believe. She's a progressive. She's not as progressive as Bernie, but I mean, we should be able to look at their record and just see that. She's a progressive. I literally went to events supporting her when she was running for Senate in 2012. I like Elizabeth Warren. This whole campaign, she's been my strong number 2, never fucked with anybody else in terms of who would be my backup if Bernie Sanders didn't make it this far. Am I disappointed in her? Has my feelings on her gone down? Yeah, a lot, I would say. If she's the nominee, would I support her? Absolutely. I don't understand why this criticism of her during a primary, calling out things that a politician did, means I hate her or dislike women or something. It's ridiculous. She is an adult. She is a politician. She's a human being. She's allowed to be wrong. She's allowed to be right. She's allowed to attack. She's allowed to not attack. It's just ridiculous. And what I'm saying here is that when she brought up the women on the stage having been the only ones to defeated a Republican incumbent in the past 30 years, and Bernie simply corrected her, saying, I actually defeated a Republican incumbent in the past 30 years, and she had to do the math because he actually did defeat a Republican incumbent within the 30-year range. And she didn't believe him because I'm assuming that very arbitrary 30-year number was picked because they did the math wrong, her campaign, and thought 1990 was more than 30 years ago. And yes, today is January 15th now because it's midnight, 2020. If Bernie Sanders defeated that incumbent in January 14th of 1990, she would technically be right. It was more than 30 years ago, 30 years in a day. But he is within the 29 years and a few months because he defeated the guy in November 1990. And if you think I'm being pedantic, which some person thought I was being on Twitter, first of all, I'm not dwelling on this. We're having a discussion because other people brought it up. I simply pointed out Bernie was correct in a tweet. It took me 30 seconds, if even that, to compose. I corrected her and moved on. But people wanted to dwell on it, so fine, let's talk about it. If you don't think a adult politician who has a mind of her own and has a campaign who wants to win didn't think of that specific 30-year number on purpose, I don't know what to tell you. And if they were wrong, you got to just simply say, hey, you were wrong, let me correct you. It doesn't mean she's lying. It doesn't mean she's a lying woman. She's a human being. Her campaign screwed up and gave her the wrong date, or she miscalculated. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. And I think that like there was people afterward too. Like CNN was mocking like David Chalian or whatever his name is, Scallion, something like that, and Dana Bash and the Cuomo kid were like mocking Bernie for pointing out that the timing like was inaccurate in her statement. And they're acting like he was like unnecessarily splitting hairs, but it's like if your point is that no one up there can beat a Republican incumbent, or that it was like that long ago that doesn't matter, like I don't know, it's not his fault, or it's not an overstep for him to point out that it was wrong. I mean, he could if it was literally anyone else in the same circumstances, he could have just pointed out that she was a Republican at the time when he was beating the incumbent Republican.
Right. And he was very generous in not doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me. One of the weird things here is that this is a debate. Why aren't people interjecting in to correct people and to say that's not true? This weird, bizarre debate rule where everyone takes their time and to talk, and then the moderator says, okay, so-and-so, you may rebut, or they don't even let someone rebut sometimes. They just go to someone completely who wasn't even referenced in the candidate's prior conversation. It's just ridiculous. A debate means you have a back and forth with people. If you're not having a back and forth with people, we got 6 people up there reciting a monologue. And what a waste of time that is.
Right. Well, yeah, it's not like it wouldn't be good TV. And I think that's the problem. Like we live in a world where we want like this like rapid, like immediate gratification. We want the sound bites, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think it would benefit all of us if we considered like at least a couple debates with a really structured format, kind of like a back and forth, like Lincoln Douglas style debate, or just like if you've ever done speech or debate or moot court or anything in high school or college, something like that, where you have here's 15 to 20 minutes, make your case. You can even do it by issue. Other people get rebuttals, things like that. I think I'd watch that, but I'm not your average TV consumer. I don't really like watching TV.
I mean, I feel like this is a new thing, to be honest, because I mean, you can't really compare the 2016 debates with the Democratic side because it was just Hillary and Bernie. So yeah, it's going to be a back and forth. But yeah. I remember the GOP debate, those guys were going at it. They were interjecting, they were interrupting each other. I mean, some of the most clipped GIFs and things from that is Donald Trump literally interrupting people going, wrong. Like, I mean, like that. I mean, you can say it's just an entertainment thing or whatever. It's not. If you don't let these people interact, we're never going to get to the meat of it. I mean, it's just pointless to let someone just lie to the audience's face and then move on to someone and say, okay, do you have a rebuttal? And also, here's a question, too. You have to fit it all in 2 minutes. Do you want to take the rebuttal or do you want to take the next question? There's your choice. I mean, how many times does that happen? It's just pointless. And, it's unfortunate that the Bernie and Elizabeth thing went on for as long as it did. I don't even think it went on for that long. It just went on for longer than it should, because that time should have been used going after Biden, and it just wasn't. I mean, I was looking at I have it right here. I was looking at the amount of time they talked, and the only person who talked less than Biden was Steyer. I mean, that's ludicrous. Biden is the front runner. Warren spoke for nearly 19 minutes. Bernie for nearly 18. Klobuchar and Buttigieg around 17 minutes each. And Biden just over 16. I mean, it's like, what's going on here? What's the point of this? If you're just going to let these guys lie, like how does Biden just say, listen, yeah, I voted for the war in Iraq, but I also tried to get them back home. What? Yeah. How is that even a rebut? Like, how is that an answer to your Iraq war vote? That more than a decade later, you tried to get some of the troops back home. Yeah, how many died in the interim? I mean, what is going on? Like, how does this just get by with no one saying anything? What would you? What,
Yeah, it's.
no, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, it's interesting to see when they choose to hold people's feet to the fire and on what issues.
Right.
So on the war front, so it's like he's been lying about his record for the past couple weeks because Bernie's been hitting him on it. He has trotted out John Kerry this week and last week to claim that Biden didn't actually vote for the war. He voted for a process, and then Bush didn't follow the process, which is bullshit. I mean, Biden is on the record calling for regime change in Iraq since 1998. Before even 9/11, he wanted to do this. And he was leading the fight in the immediate aftermath of the vote. He's at a speech, giving a speech at Brookings, the prominent think tank, talking about it in terms of war. Like, he knew what he did. So he's trying to get away from it. So tonight, like you pointed out, he trotted out new messaging. It's like, hey, it's actually okay because I was tasked with ending the war in Iraq, which, like you pointed out, erases the hundreds of thousands of people who died in it. So nobody held his feet to the fire on that. No one also holds anyone's feet to the fire on the cost of war. But they will quickly do that on literally anything Sanders proposes. And I don't know if you noticed, but the data they've been using this week and really pointing to in the language around it, this since World War II, this peacetime, or biggest spending increase in peacetime, comes from analysis by Larry Summers, who was, he was the Clinton administration, Obama administration, the champion of financial deregulation, including the repeal of Glass-Steagall, which led to the financial collapse. This is the guy that CNN is pointing to say, hey, the Sanders plans are reckless. This guy is a fucking shill for big banks. Right. So they won't ask questions about how much war costs, how much, whatever your military proposals are, or the Iran war in general, but they will on, giving health care to sick people.
Right. It's a great point, and it's a perfect segue to discuss just how the framing is just so disingenuous. If you look at the chyrons on the CNN screen, yeah. it's like Bernie, you say Medicare for all will cover everybody, but what about how it'll bankrupt every insurance provider in Iowa and leave all people who work for insurance companies, which, by the way, Iowa is an insurance state, whatever the fuck that means. Or was it Des Moines is an insurance city or something
insurance
like that?
City.
Yeah. All those people who had jobs. I mean, it's just stunningly how they frame these things. And another thing that was interesting to me. So you have every candidate up there attacking Trump's trade policies, going on and on about how his trade deals have been hurting American workers, farmers, energy companies, whatever. They run the gamut, steel. And yeah, that's true. And then they all use Trump's bad trade policies to then pivot to, which is why I support the USMCA, Trump's trade deal. Like, where the only person who doesn't support that was on the stage was Bernie Sanders. How is that not called out? How is like a moderator will harp on every little thing in the Medicare for all conversation, like you said, but the idea that Trump's trade policies are bad, so I'm voting for Trump's trade policy, doesn't get just say, hey, could you explain this?
Yeah. The framing on that one was, hey, why aren't you willing to compromise? Like, what the fuck? The negotiations haven't even started yet. Like, if he gets elected, why not hear out what his utopian scenario is and let him argue that, and then other people try to talk about that? Why are we accepting Trump's proposal as the baseline? It's just like, imagine if you were selling a house or buying a house, whatever, any like real estate transaction, and the realtor comes to you and says, hey, look, you got to compromise. Like, you hadn't even started, you would find that to be a ludicrous proposal because your opening bid or offer, like, you don't even have any traction or leeway on that. Like, in a sense like that doesn't make sense to anybody. Like, you're selling your car, you're not going to immediately accept a compromise without hearing out if someone else. Sorry, my cat is like right here.
It's all good.
Um,
My cat's
she,
my cat's done the same during a stream. I got a cough. This show is very laid back. We're all chilling.
Yeah.
You know, this is not CNN where we professionally go on TV and characterize a conversation between two people as not being he said she said. You saw that, right? That was
Oh my God. Well, yeah, and she's a Clinton camp person.
right. I'm not here to go back to the the Bernie Warren thing, but But I'm using this example as media criticism on CNN, that someone who is regularly on CNN would go on TV and say her wording. It's not exact, but her wording was that she can't believe Bernie said he denied saying that a woman can't become president because this wasn't a he said she said, because CNN reported it. What is that even? Because CNN reported it. What? Yeah. And then Anderson Cooper, interestingly, stood up, but he rebutted and said, well, to be fair, it actually, from what I understand, is he said she said, because only two people were in the room. And then she goes, yeah, but CNN talked to other sources. And Cooper had to explain that when two people are in a room and it's just two people, and then one of those people goes and tells someone, and that other someone becomes your source, they were in fact not in the room, so yes, it is indeed still a he said, she said. It's just like it's just like common sense. Like, it's not even like...
I mean, that person ran a media outlet for like multiple years, so you would think that
they still do.
They still.
I don't know if people
are they still with Share Blue?
I don't know if people realize this, but Share Blue, which she still works for, is no longer called Share Blue. It's now called the American Independent at AmericanIndependent.com. It's the same exact shit. It's the same people working there. It's the same company who owns them. Nothing has changed except the name, because they realized that the name Share Blue was synonymous with a Hillary Clinton PR firm from 2016, because that's essentially how they acted. Now, is everyone who works there still doing that? I don't think so. For example, Oliver Willis, who I've disagreed with about primary stuff before, is usually, especially in recent years, have been pretty good. I thought, he's been not as obvious in terms of he's been sort of more down the line. But it's clear that their editor-at-large, Jess McIntosh, who's a CNN contributor along with working there, is not, because this is something consistent with CNN. They regularly do this. I mean, before the debate went live, they had Hillary Rosen and Karen McKinney, I think her name is. I could be getting her name wrong.
Karen Finney.
Thank you. These are two people who, during 2016, were strong Hillary Clinton supporters and have been on, and they're Democratic strategists, they work for the establishment, obviously, and they have, since 2016, consistently been throwing and tossing bad faith attacks at the Sanders campaign. And it's just like, listen, you want to have these people on, that's fine. You want to get both sides, fine. But no one is ever on the other side, meaning the leftist side, to rebut. It's just, they usually get a CNN straight news reporter, which still obviously is someone who 9 times out of 10, obviously there are exceptions, and they're usually really great reporters, but 9 times out of 10 is someone who just toes a corporatist outlet line, and they have one of those people. They'll have 1 or 2 Dem strategists. They'll have a Republican CNN contributor, sometimes even someone who formerly worked for the Trump campaign or the Trump administration itself. And you'll have Anderson Cooper or Wolf Blitzer talking with these people, discussing why this candidate is good and that candidate is bad. And for some reason, they always love the centrists, no matter how they do, like Amy Klobuchar and Joe Biden, and they always shit on the progressive, in this case, Bernie Sanders. You're not seeing the Warren crap anymore. They're not crapping on her anymore because she's in 3rd or 4th place in the polls. I believe she's 2nd in Iowa currently. But everywhere else, she's third or fourth. Nationally, she's like in fourth. People have basically written her out, apparently. And the people who like her are there, I guess, as Dem strategists to say, now that she's not a threat, that yeah, she's the good progressive, and Bernie Sanders hates women, and blah 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 blah. It's like it's just like what's going on here? Like it's so frustrating. It really is.
Yeah, and not to belabor the point, but one thing I did want to point out with the Sanders Warren stuff was after the debate, they had these people. Cat's back. Sorry. She's just a kitten, so she's really cuddly.
What's the cat's name?
Her name's Thana.
Thana.
After Thanatos.
Thana. Let me ask you, who do you think won tonight's Democratic debate? We're getting a purr there. We're getting a purr. Ooh.
Oh yeah.
How's that? Ooh.
She's a Sanders stan, of course.
Yes,
of
makes
course.
sense. Oh, ooh, she's a.
Yeah.
she's one of those rare Bernie bros who are women. Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. But after the debate, so you saw like the wonky body language, the refusal to shake each other's hands, the conversation, all that kind of shit. CNN was doing this like play-by-play analysis, and they brought up multiple points, including in an interview with Steyer.
Ooh, they spoke to Steyer.
Yeah.
What did he say?
They had him. It was when we were talking, but I caught it out of the corner of my eye, and they were having him react to that video, and it's like, is this of any material impact to voters? Like they talked about that in the first hour. That was before they had talked about things like impeachment, Medicare for all, college affordability, climate change to the very small extent they talked about it. They didn't even talk about like gun control, LGBTQIA plus like equality or rights, abortion, immigration, wages, police accountability, anything like that. The Supreme Court, they didn't talk about any of this, but they talked in the debate about this, getting this conversation where people got wires crossed in 2018, and then the body language and the interaction after the debate, and doing like play-by-play analysis of their conversation after the debate. Like that does not matter, but it speaks to the determination for CNN to turn this into some scandal, because then they will be at the center of it because they have the footage and they wrote the story. Like everyone would need to link to them and use their footage. It just shows like the way a corporate media operates in this political landscape does you and me and your viewers a disservice.
Right. I mean, absolutely. I mean, again, they have this video, like you mentioned. There's no audio. We don't know what was said. So you can't speculate. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's a moment, sure, if you want to just point out, oh, it seems like there was a moment at the end, fine. But the speculation and the weird fan fiction of what you wanted them to say or hope they said or wondered what they said or guessed what they said, it's just pointless. It adds nothing. It adds nothing. And I'm sure it'll be interesting to see if there was a hot mic that may not have been live but caught it on the recording end or something. It'd be interesting to see if CNN tries to make something out of that.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a CNN producers, I would sit on that. I would get the story and let the speculation be the story for a day, and then drop the mic, like the hot mic, if that happened, in 48 to 72 hours to revive it. I hope they did not, because I just want this fucking story to go away. It's just, it does not matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. At the end of the day,
listen,
I don't even think they care.
Listen, I totally agree to a point. Like, would I rather
Sure.
not be talking about this? Of course. But I mean, we're now at the point where the gloves are off. We're 3 weeks from Iowa. They should go after Joe Biden. But I mean, for example, I saw Sean McElway, who's I believe he's a Warren supporter. He's been on this show. He's done good work with Data for Progress. I got nothing against him in terms of what he does, but I saw this quote from him where he says, Bernie and Warren should be teaming up to take down the final boss, who is Joe Biden. And I saw a lot of people like that quote, but the quote's nonsense. Because Bernie and Sanders aren't playing two-player co-op. They're not gonna, like, if I'm gonna go by his analogy, it's not two-player co-op.
They can't be co-presidents.
Yeah, they're facing each other, and if Bernie or Warren want to get to Goro, they need to beat Shang Tsung first. And this is very dated references, Mortal Kombat, I guess. But if Bernie and Warren want to get to M. Bison, they need to beat Barlog or Sagat first, whatever the Street Fighter guys were.
yeah.
If Warren and Bernie, I'm gonna keep going, by the way, wants to get to Bowser, they gotta beat the Koopa Kids first. I mean, it's that simple. And Warren and Bernie are one of the Koopa Kids each. So I mean, there's gonna be one winner, and it's clear that the gloves are off. And do I wish they weren't? Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, they gotta be in it to win here, and it's not like Obama versus Hillary in 2008, where there were some policy differences, but at the end of the day, they were pretty much the same candidate. There's a fundamental difference between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Whether that means you like Warren or whether that means you like Bernie, I mean, there's a reason you like either one of them and not the other. And there's obviously a whole pool of people who need to be convinced as to why they should choose one over the other.
Yeah, I think they've both done a really good job at not really, up until this point, not really going after each other, at least in a meaningful way. There's been some, distinguishing between policy differences. I think like Warren's funding model for M4A, or her alternative to the Senate bill that Bernie introduced, hers relies on a population increase through immigration reform. That's a difference in their policy proposals, and people talked about that. That's fine. That's fair. It's what primaries are for. I think this weekend with the volunteer script and then the reaction from the Warren campaign opened the door up to character attacks on each other that weren't happening before this week. Right. And I think that we should really be wary of that going into what you've mentioned several times so far, is like, we need to just focus on Biden.
Right.
Like, this guy is the strongest. He's been pretty much untouched. And all things are pointing to a repeat of 2016 when you have Burisma now getting hacked. You have a ton of questions looming over that whole relationship with Hunter. We are poised to go into a similar scenario in which a flawed candidate is just continually pummeled by Trump and Fox News and the right-wing media apparatus on issues of corruption, exploiting the office for personal gain, and many other issues that would lead to declined turnout, lesser enthusiasm, and ultimately a Trump victory. So getting Biden out of the race is issue number one.
Right. No, I completely agree. But at the same time, while they shouldn't be going at each other, I mean, it's clear now that, if someone says something, there's got to be some sort of, rebuttal. Like, there's no, the non-attack clause they had or whatever clearly is just no longer accurate. And if one person's going to not abide by it, I mean, this whole thing started over a call script that it's now come out that, yes, it seems like there were low-level staffers who were involved in the scripting of the call script. Bernie originally said that he had not approved it. There's been nothing that shows he did approve it. When you have a campaign of hundreds of people, you're not micromanaging everything. Some people go off on their own and do something, whatever. But at the same time, the call script just basically points out the accurate data from the polling that shows who Warren supporters are, and that's all that's repeated. There's no disparaging of Warren as a person. There's no even attacking her policies or what she stands for. It's literally Elizabeth Warren is great. She's my second pick. However, it worries me that her supporters are this, and this, and this. I believe it was more affluent and majority white, which interestingly, that's off hands. That's you can't say that now, but in 2016, the regular attack on Bernie Sanders that no one had any problem weaponizing against him was that his supporters were white Whether you believe that was accurate or not, it was not. But whether you believe it was accurate or not doesn't really matter. The weaponization of the race of his supporters was used. So I don't. Did you attack the Hillary campaign for doing that, or did you just say, "Oh, Bernie's got to do better with people of color"? Ha ha ha! Old white guy doesn't connect with people of color. But with Warren, apparently, it's, ooh, how dare you? You're going negative. I mean, that's the constant thing here. Because, when a candidate or a campaign, because, yes, like we said, the candidates haven't really attacked each other much this cycle so far. When a campaign or staffers or supporters go after a particular candidate, usually it's the Bernie people who actually do attacks that stick to that candidate and actually cause issue for that candidate because, I mean, unfortunately, their candidate usually has a bad record. But when another candidate tries to do the same to Bernie, it's a lot harder for them because somehow, some way, I'll never understand it. I mean, there's got to be something out there on this guy that no one has found. Like 40 plus years in politics, 78 years old, and the guy has never been caught on camera saying something that's going to stick. Like, I mean, it's unbelievable. It makes me really, if you're not sold on him yet, that should be one of the selling points. But, I mean, here you have this dynamic where it doesn't work against him. So what do when you both have the same weapon? You both have the same tactic, but it only works for your opponent. You say that tactic is illegal. You say that tactic can't be utilized because, hell, if you can't use it, who cares? It's not working for you. But if the other guy can't use it, then he's handicapped, He can't get away with what he's been doing.
Yeah. It's just, you'd think that after one primary with a candidate who had pretty much like the full disposal of the Democratic machine, or the full Democratic machine at her disposal, all the opposite research that they could have done, everything that they had. And what was the worst thing that they came out during that time? I can't even remember. It's just like the weird.
We have Bernie saying
essays.
Something. We have the rape essay, which is miscategorized as a rape essay because the rape is brought up in the essay when it's clearly an essay about stereotypical gender roles of the time. Bernie is not advocating for rape or saying he's a rape fetishist. She's literally, I mean, is it well written? No. The guy was like, what, in his late 20s, early 30s at the time? And this was like the 70s where people were, like, what was it, the sex revolution? I was before my time, I don't know, but you always hear about the 60s and 70s being like, oh, yeah, everyone's just out there, hippies. And so, I mean, clearly people weren't using the woke language they use in 2020 back in the 60s and 70s. So it just miscategorizes that essay. You could say it's shit. You could say you don't agree with it, but to say it's a rape essay is just wrong. They tried out the video of him in Russia, which was him.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. A, it's cool for us, but B, first of all, Russia wasn't even Russia then. Number two, it was a program that the U.S. had with other countries where political leaders from different areas, from different countries, would come together and basically socialize. If you ask me, we could do a lot more of that now. And then what else did they try out? They got that word that I'm not going to say it. I don't think there's anything wrong with the word, but I'm not going to say it because it's going to be clipped and used against me, even though the word is not racist. The word that means stingy, that is a old English dictionary word, a word that I learned in New York City in the 90s and in the 2000s in both elementary school and high school as part of your spelling class, because it is a legitimate word. It's unbelievable.
But it's things like that.
Right.
Like, and it just shows like this is their oppo this time around is like, oh, a volunteer script. Like, is that really a big? I mean, you've got Pete with Wells Fargo attorneys as his advisors, and your attack on Bernie is that his script wasn't nice enough to another candidate.
And you bring up a great point there. I mean, Bernie, clearly, if you're not sure, full disclosure, we both are Bernie Sanders supporters. I mean, it should be clear from our entire history of doing this. But I mean, Bernie has had a lot of opportunities to bring up things, and he just didn't. He's consistently done this throughout the debates, where there were clearly points that he could have made and only he could have made about people's record, like what you just said about Buttigieg's attorney from Wells Fargo.
Yep.
I mean, how do you not do that? And I mean, Bernie also, knowing Biden's doing this closeness with Obama thing, how do you not rebut and say, well, this is where I worked with Obama. Hell, I'm the only Democratic congressperson, period, who tried to save the Iran deal by voting against the sanctions that helped sully relations with Iran. Easily Bernie was on the forefront of the fight to save the ACA. And every time someone says that Bernie wants to destroy the ACA by bringing out Medicare, by enacting Medicare for all, how he doesn't use that. I mean, as clear as day, say this. No one fought harder than me for the ACA to protect it. I will continue to protect it. And if Medicare for all, when Medicare for all is enacted, ACA will be protected and be eligible and be the law of the land until the very second Medicare for all goes into effect. So yep. I mean, it's just like I don't get why those points aren't made. I don't know if there's a campaign strategy behind not saying that stuff. I would love to hear it if it is, because it's bizarre to me to not say that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, even when he was championing the ACA as it was being attacked by the Republicans in 2017, in the summer of 2017, as you remember, the Republicans were trying to repeal it. Multiple attempts. There were rallies almost every day on Capitol Hill, and I was at a lot of them. He was a constant figure at all of these. And it was Warren, it was Booker was at a lot of them. Harris was at a lot of them, and then
Warren could bring it up too. You're absolutely right. If she was there, she should be bringing it up when they're attacking her Medicare for all plan. I don't understand what the like. That's why I sort of just want this this weird agreement they all have to be nice to each other, to just drop. I get the hesitation. So far, we've seen anyone who went hard on the attack just completely drop. Like Castro and Kamala, but their support wasn't really there to begin with, so it's not like they had some strong support that was going to back them when they went for it. Warren or Bernie could easily go after Biden on this stuff, and what's going to be the loss there? There's going to be none. In fact, some people will probably be rallied by it. I don't get it.
It's just, I think it's an unwillingness on establishment Democrats and the party brass. It's unwillingness on their end to admit that Obama wasn't everything that they wanted him to be. They would need to admit that proposal and that plan was fatally flawed and wasn't sufficient. He came in promising health care for everybody, and he couldn't deliver. So to immediately have the next Dem president point that out would just seem, I think to them, seems like a bad move. But just sorry, I don't care about your politics and your optics, when people are sick and dying and going bankrupt for medical bills. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. We can talk about the accomplishments that the ACA made and also make something better. And those are not mutually exclusive. And I think just establishment Democrats and centrists can't acknowledge that because they see Obama is Godhead.
Right. No, that's really what it comes down to. But I have to say though, the closeness with Obama was a major factor in 2016, And I mean, while it's clearly helped buoying Biden, it's also clearly not helping him enough like it helped Hillary.
Mhm.
I mean, Obama's legacy is, I mean, it's sort of Trump trashed it. There's nothing there. I mean, the ACA will be his legacy until something else is enacted, which it will. When it happens, who knows? But it'll undoubtedly happen. And then there goes even that. His foreign policy achievements, just poof. His domestic achievements, poof. Judicial, he didn't even get his Supreme Court pick. I mean, in that last
Yeah, yeah.
go around, I mean, was he a good president? I mean, I think at the end of the day, when history looks back and rates our presidents, he'll certainly be in the top tier. But I also think the bar is incredibly low. So I mean, it's like wow, every presidents 1 through 10 all have like 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. If we're gonna go with the weird analogies and continue off the video game thing, um, you know, who do you think is done from this debate? I mean, I don't think debates matter that much necessarily unless there's some big moment, which I don't think we had in this debate. I don't think it affects the top tier candidates too much, but it could set a real media sort of we've seen this with Klobuchar, sort of like a talking point surrounding a candidate. And I gotta say, I don't think Klobuchar even won over her favorite media pundits uh, this time around. I think Klobuchar failed to do anything that was any good in terms of any sort of putting herself out there.
Yeah.
Buttigieg sort of. I mean, I don't like him, but this was easily his weakest debate. Easily his weakest debate. I mean, Biden, he didn't do much, and whether people might read into that as, wow, our front runner's just standing there and not saying anything. Maybe that's what they're gonna take away, but who knows? I mean, Bernie and Warren, I don't know how much their interaction is going to affect either of them. Steyer's moving up in those polls with all that money he's spending. It's pretty incredible to see, actually. But I think once Iowa and New Hampshire come around, I think that's done. That's Steyer. I mean, basically, he's focusing on those later states,
Yeah.
and his bump is totally the result of the actual top tier candidates ignoring those later states right now as they focus on Iowa and New Hampshire, and Steyer just overloading the constituents in those later states with his ads. So when they're asked who do you like, they're like, oh, I hear a lot about this Steyer guy. I think I like him.
Hmm. Yeah, like the it's mostly just they're buying name awareness, and that doesn't necessarily correlate or result in votes. One thing I do want to point out is because of that, they stand to pull votes from Pete uh, at a time when he really is going to need like the biggest impact because he's probably not going to win Iowa. It's close there, but probably not. I'd be surprised if he did. He definitely won't win New Hampshire. That's like pretty much a lock for Bernie. Um, won't win Nevada. Definitely won't win South Carolina. So their game is just all in on Iowa. And that's when, after those four, that's when, um, that's when Bloomberg and Steyer kick in. And those are two guys with pretty similar platforms to Pete. And they're buying that name awareness. Even if it's just a little bit, they can hurt him enough where they just like bump him into a lower spot and give more delegates to Sanders, Warren, Biden, and he could be done at Super Tuesday.
Right. You know,
So fingers crossed on that.
It'll be interesting to see who drops out after what.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty simple. If whoever wins Iowa and New Hampshire between Bernie and Warren, the other one should drop out. This idea that they should both stay in, well, now more than ever seems to be ludicrous.
Yeah.
It's not going to come down to the delegate count. It's clear as day because someone's running away with it at some point. It's just I don't see how it does. I mean, how they don't. And it's gonna be Biden if both of those two are in the race. Come like, maybe we could take it after Nevada, but who knows? If Biden cleans up in South Carolina, and the delegate account from that becomes insurmountable, then there's an issue. And that could totally happen if Biden completely runs away with. Proportionally, he will get a ton more delegates. Even if Bernie wins Iowa, even if Bernie wins New Hampshire, if it's close, like it is in the polls right now, he'll only net 1, 2, maybe even the same number of delegates as Biden. And the same goes for Warren if she's in first. But, that's not going to be the case in South Carolina. The best hope it seems like right now, maybe it's one of them can turn it around. It'd be the upset of the century. It's not unheard of. Obama did it in 2008. Obama had something else going for him though. If Biden runs away with it in South Carolina, and the two of them, Bernie and Warren, are still in it, then I think it's going to be hard for it not to be Biden. I bet maybe the best you could hope for is that Buttigieg really turns people out, convinces Biden voters to go with him, and he splits Biden's vote a little bit. That's a possibility. Maybe Klobuchar, I don't think she's going to do as well as Buttigieg could possibly, but maybe those couple of percentage points she shaves off Biden could be helpful to Bernie or Warren too. Other than that, I don't know. I really don't think Steyer and Bloomberg are two people to worry about. Maybe Steyer more so. I actually think because people don't know him. I think people know Bloomberg and they don't like him. I see a hard path for Bloomberg, especially with him going out of his way to not be on the debate stage. You could care one way or another whether you could say one way or another whether people actually watch these debates or pay attention to them. But the photos do go around. They're the photos that are used for the stories on CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all the major, New York Times, Washington Post. They use these photos from the debates, and people see these photos and they internalize, oh, these are the people who are on the debate stage. These are the people who are in the race. Just Bloomberg not being up there, and sort of most people won't think about him.
Yeah. I think you alluded to it a couple times. I think Klobuchar is probably done either after Iowa or New Hampshire. Her fundraising has not been great or up to the same threshold as Pete or Bernie or Warren or Biden. Doesn't have a lot of staying power, polling pretty low. I think she's just going to drop out and probably back like Biden.
You think she's going to back Biden?
Yeah, her policies are closer to his, but I could see her supporting Warren for other reasons.
Right. I wonder what her play would be. It's interesting. I could see her backing Biden, but I could also see her backing Warren for the same reasons.
Yeah.
Who knows, man? I don't know. Her, she's. Biden seems to be the sure thing, I guess. I don't know why I sounded so surprised when you said that, because I'm not. But yeah.
It wouldn't be Pete.
Right.
It would not be Pete.
Now I see people actually thinking that Warren's making a play with Biden here, and let me tell you, I don't believe it, and if it happened, I would be so disappointed. It would truly be a political career change for Warren. I don't see how she does that, period. And then I don't see how she does that and continues on as some sort of progressive standard bearer. Which I think she is. She's
totally
a progressive, just not as progressive as Bernie Sanders. There's nothing wrong with that if you're someone who likes progressives but has some sort of reason for not liking the most progressive person, then Warren's fine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this was quite the debate. And for people who are asking, I was not on YouTube tonight. We were talking about this before we went live, because I set up the live event. I scheduled the live event on YouTube like I do for every single show. And the title of the event was, I believe it was the post-democratic live stream show on the CNN debate or something like that. And I guess because I used the word CNN in the title, which it's not a copyright infringement to use that word and that those acronyms in the title of your article or video title, I received a copyright strike from CNN for it. That's right. I got copy stricken on YouTube for a live stream video that wasn't even live yet. So there was no content connected to it. So because of that copyright strike, I couldn't monetize the stream. I couldn't run the stream. And I am forbidden from doing live streams on YouTube either A, until YouTube reverses the strike, or B, until YouTube, the copyright strike expires in April. I'm feeling pretty confident that they're going to reverse it, but it's probably going to take a few days. And on top of that, it shouldn't have happened to begin with. That's ludicrous that you would copyright strike a non-live live stream. Oh man, yeah,
YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man.
Nah, well, I don't work for YouTube, so I'm fine with it. So Jordan Uhl, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Of course.
I'm gonna jump off with you. Usually I do a show after this, but it's the post-debate show. It's like I do like a second half of the show for patrons. But that's it for tonight. It's almost 1 a.m. on the East Coast. Patreon.com/Matt Binder. You can support the show there. Jordan, where can people follow you and keep tabs on what you're doing?
I'm at Twitter at Jordan Uhl.
Perfect. And folks, I will be doing the Majority Report on Thursday. Yeah, that should be fun. Tune in to the Majority Report on Thursday. Other than that, have a good night.